Andy, we are 2 days after Christmas. We
Yes.
thought we might be taking a break. We decided there was enough going on that we wanted to connect and share with our pod listeners. Merry Christmas, Andy. Soon to be Happy New Year. How was your holidays, Andy?
Merry Christmas, Dave, and all those that are listening. My holidays were good. I had the family here. We enjoyed, Christmas morning, eating more than we should, definitely more gifts than we should have enjoyed. It was pretty fun, but it was really fun Christmas. I felt like it's fun to see how well your family knows one another. And I felt like we really saw that this Christmas. So it was a lot of fun and glad to be here with you today, Dave, and enjoying the Men of a Certain X holiday specials, I guess.
Yeah, I guess it is a fair thing to say of the holiday special. I will tell you, we had a very interesting time. Usually, my oldest daughter is like, she can barely sleep the night before. My oldest son, who's now a young adult, we used to have to give him Benadryl that he was so excited before to go to bed. But it was interesting this year. Everyone was like, "I'm gonna sleep in," and I was like, "Well, that's not gonna last." I'm like, "I'm gonna have to get up early. I have to walk the dog, make sure that the dog gets his walk before everybody wants to open presents."
Yeah.
So I wake up, 5 o'clock or something, thinking everybody's gonna be up already, and they're gonna be like, "Come on, Dad, get them out for a walk," and all this stuff, and sure enough, nobody was up. And then 6 o'clock came around. I was like, surely 6 o'clock, somebody's going to be up. Nope, nobody was there. So then we started like my other son, who's in town with his dog. He also had the walk, and we're like, this is annoying. Why are people not up? And for my youngest daughter, we kind of turned off her sound machine because she sleeps with a sound machine. We had the dog go in there, bark a couple times, and she eventually woke up. But then I was like, "Hey, let's go open presents. Go get everybody." No, Dad, let's let them sleep. I'm like, "What's wrong with you?"
I don't think anybody at the age of 10 has ever said that before. So
I, it was amazing to me. It was completely amazing, but it was fun. We had a good time. It is obviously with the older kids, it's nice. They have a real appreciation for their gifts, but just to see the joy in the young ones now too
yeah.
is I still enjoy that very much. So it was a good time there. So Andy, a lot happens over the last since our last podcast. We had a big
Yeah.
sports weekend, big NFL weekend. Um, Check in on how's your team? You're 11-4. How do you feel?
Dave, I'm feeling good. For anybody that isn't aware of the biggest news from Sunday, surely the biggest news, the Detroit Lions beat the Minnesota Vikings in a very exciting game, clinched the NFC North title for the first time ever. Last time they won a division was 30 years ago. It wasn't even the NFC North at the time. So the Lions are guaranteed to host a playoff game right now, sitting in third place in the NFC, setting up for what could be a really fun match with Philadelphia potentially. So feeling good. The Lions are good. And Dave, we're going into uh, Cowboys Lions weekend here, and maybe this game is going to mean something for both teams. So looking forward to that. But how'd your Cowboys do, Dave? How did your Cowboys do?
Andy, it was as I thought it would. Actually, they played better against the defense. They played better against the run. But as normal, it worked out just as it. Now, Dak did have a great drive in the fourth quarter to put them up by 1 point, but with 4.5 minutes left, I was like, this is inevitable. The Cowboys are going to give up 4 and 5 yard chunks all the way down the field, and they'll give up a last second field goal. I was like, yep, and that's how it played out. I don't even think I watched the end of it, Andy, because I knew how it was gonna work, and sure enough, it did. And now I have utterly no confidence in the Cowboys. Like, look, maybe they're lined up as a fifth seed to play Tampa Bay, which is playing great football right now.
Yeah.
And it's kind of and they'll play in Tampa Bay. Now, last year the same thing happened. They went in and beat up Tom Brady and the Bucks. But this year, it's sad, is it sad to say that Baker Mayfield may be better than Tom Brady was last year? It could
It's
be.
possible.
So
Yeah.
anyway, so Andy, it's utter chaos. Obviously, the Ravens destroyed the Niners on
Yes.
thing. Now, you had called the Ravens your number one team. I had called the Niners my number one team. How's your top five looking these days?
So very little change, to be honest. I mean, we'll come back, I think, to Baltimore, Sanford in here a little bit, but Baltimore, in my book, is still playing the most consistent, good football in the NFL. I think they can definitely be beat. They have been, but on a consistent basis, they are playing really good ball, better than anybody else. And so I still got them as one. And though San Fran is questionable, I still got them sitting at number two. But I did change things around a little bit after that. I moved Miami up to three. I think they deserve it. They're playing really good football. They're so dangerous with Tyreek Hill and Waddle. Just they can put up points really, really fast, and they're playing at a good level right now. So I've got Miami three. I put Philly back at four. And Dave, I'm sorry, but I had to drop Dallas out of the top five. I think it's really going to come down to this game with Dallas or Detroit. One of them might sneak into that spot. But right now, I've got Buffalo at five. And I hate to do that. And I really wrestled with who to put there. I was thinking maybe Cleveland, maybe Buffalo. But I think Buffalo, even though they could potentially still miss the playoffs, is playing really strong football in the moment. And so if they can sustain that, they could be cause some upsets in the AFC. I think right now they're poised to play the Chiefs in the first round, which should be really interesting. They'll probably lose because that's what they do. But nonetheless, I've got Buffalo five, Philly four, Miami three, San Fran two, and Baltimore staying at number one. And I think they'll hold that, I think, until the playoffs prove otherwise.
Yeah, I actually think like, is there ever been a year when there's been so much mediocre football? Like the Chiefs, did you watch the Chiefs game?
They stink.
They're not good. That's not a
Yeah,
good football team. It's
yeah.
amazing that they were, what were they, 8-2 at one point, and now they're 9-6 or 9-7 or whatever they are. They're not a good football team. That was ugly. Um, I really struggled, so I'm going to go with Baltimore one. I mean, I think they showed obviously a lot this weekend. I go San Francisco two. I am like you. I'm going to go Miami number three, but here's where I'll change it up a little bit. I'm going to go. I think I'm just not so sure about Philly anymore.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
just don't really look that good. I'm going with Cleveland for. I really love this. As
Yeah.
crazy as that is, their defense is really good. And Joe
Yeah.
Flacco is just huck the ball downfield. When he was in Baltimore, the joke used to be is like, hey, just throw it down. You either get a long completion, interception, which is as good as a pass, or pass interference, or good as a punt, or pass interference. And he was a master at that. He had that great in their Super Bowl win of 2012. He had that great game against the Broncos in the playoffs where he just threw the ball downfield. Guy caught it, ran it all the way in for the score and the win, or actually tied it and they won it later. But so I'm going to go Cleveland number four, and I'm going to put your Detroit Lions, Andy, number
Wow.
five.
Wow.
I'm going to throw them in there. I do like a lot of what they're doing. I think they're because here's the thing. It's not so much that I love Detroit. I do think they're playing good football. I just don't really like anybody else. I mean, who else is in there? I'm not a believer in Seattle. I'm not a believer in anybody in the NFC South. Other than Detroit, nobody else in the North. The Cowboys, look, you can put them anywhere you want. The same thing's going to do. They may be a competitive first round playoff win, but otherwise they're not going any further. Buffalo, I like, but they struggled a lot this week, and I was a little unsure about them. So I'm going to go with that. That's my top five. So I'm going to go Baltimore, San Francisco, Miami, Cleveland, and then Detroit is my top five. So there we
Wow.
go.
I
Andy,
like it.
yeah, go ahead.
I like it. Cleveland is. I mean, I think it's a really good spot. I'm hesitant to put Detroit that high, but I think it's a fair look the way you're looking at it. So we'll see. It's going to be an interesting weekend coming up here for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Dallas and Detroit's going to be good. Now, look, I fully expect Dallas is going to come out and they could potentially win that game. It's still
Yeah.
not going to change my view. I mean, I still think they're an awful team. And this is from the fans. So, Andy, the 1-2 matchup, the Lamar versus Purdy matchup, I
Yeah.
think we saw Purdy was the favorite for NFL MVP moving into this week. 4 interceptions, really bad performance. Whereas Lamar, I think, really solidified himself as the MVP. It's his to lose at this point. But the noise and he's already an MVP. He's been very well, had a big free agency last year, and got a big contract. He's well established. Purdy obviously came on at the end of last year, went all the way pretty far up with him to the NFC Championship game before losing the Eagles. He's a controversial figure. a
Yeah.
lot of people, and I think you've even been on the record here of making pokes at Purdy.
Yeah.
Where do you stand on Brock Purdy? Let's flush this out.
All right. So Brock Purdy, he has a lot to celebrate, right? I mean, great story, being the last man drafted, getting on the Niners, great playoff run last year, unfortunate injury, showed his toughness, playing through some injury pain, came back this year, got the starting job, and is doing a fine job at quarterback, right? But he is anybody playing quarterback, right? I mean, you could replace Brock Purdy with Sam Darnold as they did against the Ravens. You could replace him with Case Keenum. You could replace him with Beat Hard or any number of backup quarterbacks that are good, decent ball throwers. Nothing changes for the 49ers. That team wins and has the same record, pretty much whoever you put back in the pocket there, because that team is just remarkably strong. Great coaching. Hats off to John Lynch and Mike Shanahan for building a fantastic team and incredible talent, right? And so you look at that team, you're like, wow, these guys are great. So many good, skills players on that team. Anybody could go back there and pitch the ball and do well. And that's not a knock on Purdy. He's doing an absolutely fine job. And if they go on to do well in the playoffs and win the Super Bowl, hats off to them all. Like it's a team effort. But Brock Purdy is not the difference maker on that team. And he certainly is no one's most valuable player, right? He's statistically doing dynamite. But Sam Darnold, the backup quarterback, would be doing just as well if he was taking all the pitches there for the Niners, because he's throwing to Kittle, he's throwing to Debo, he's throwing to McCaffrey. McCaffrey's running the ball, clearly the MVP on that team. The whole nonsense Brock Purdy MVP is absolute lunacy. There's better players on that team, more valuable players on that team, and there's probably 50 players you could rattle off that are more valuable to their individual teams than Brock Purdy is to the San Francisco 49ers. So hey, respect the guy, appreciate him, doing a fine job. Get the fuck out of here with this MVP talk, though.
The disdain that you say Brock Purdy is quite coming through. Look, I'm going to push back a little on you here, Andy, because this is look. Nobody can say Darnold would do the same as Brock Purdy this year. You just can't
Better,
realistically say
probably better, probably better.
Sam Darnold is awful as a quarterback. He's shown that time and time again. But think about this, though, Andy. With San Francisco, to your counter, I'm going to counter you here. Jimmy
Right.
Garoppolo, who is a little above mediocre quarterback, did take the Niners. They almost won the Super Bowl. They were leading in the fourth quarter. He was hurt. But they also had Nick Mullins as their quarterback from a period of time. They've also had some other, and they did not do what Brock Purdy is doing. And in fact, I think even Brock Purdy has surpassed Jimmy Garoppolo, the most beautiful man alive quarterback. I'll put that in quotes. But I look against the toughest competition. So week one against Pittsburgh, everyone's shitting on Brock Purdy and saying, and like even the defensive backs are saying, how overrated he is. And all he did was then fly across country, destroy Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh, throw a couple pass TDs and whatnot, and did a great job there. Against Dallas, where they have this vaunted pass rush and they have this great ability. All he did there was throw for over 250 yards and 4 touchdowns. Against Philadelphia, another great pass rush where he got hurt last year, 4 more touchdowns. Look, I don't disagree that having Christian McCaffrey, Kittle, and Debo is a great cast. And when Debo and McCaffrey were out, they lost 3 games. So
Right.
look, that is a tough thing to overcome. I think he's a better though than what most people are. I mean, if you look at the state of quarterback play that we have right now, go through, so you have Hurts and Dak in the NFC East. Who the Giants are awful at quarterback. They could use Brock Purdy. The Redskins, here I am, the Commanders, or whatever you're going to call the Washington football team, they have Sam Howell. They're awful quarterback. Go through the NFC North, South, West. I mean, the state of quarterback play is awful, and I think Brock Purdy is at least in the top 10, the
Oh,
top 8. I mean, he's clearly. We'll have to do that. He's at least a top 10 quarterback. I just can't think of many other
There's
people.
no way he's a top 10 quarterback. Listen, you proved the point, Dave. So the Niners got to Super Bowl with Jimmy G, best looking man alive, and they almost won. They almost won, and it wasn't because of Jimmy G, right? Jimmy G has proven himself to be very mediocre. He's been benched in Las Vegas, right? I mean, he's a fine quarterback, just like Brock Purdy, but way better looking, obviously, right? But mediocre, and the Niners were still a really good team, but weren't getting back to that level until what? The arrival of Brock Purdy? Fuck no. It was the arrival of Christian McCaffrey, right? McCaffrey completely changed the Niners dynamic. On the Niners today, you said it when he was out, they didn't win. McCaffrey is definitely the most valuable player on that team because most valuable is not statistically best performing, right? It's a difference. Most valuable is you take this guy away from this team, and this team is no longer as good as they would be. And you could put the Giants' Tommy DeVito behind that Niners squad.
Oh, come on. You
And the
cannot even
Niners,
go
and
there.
the Niners win-loss record is no better or worse for having Tommy DeVito or Brock
Oh,
Purdy.
that's
Take out
awful.
McCaffrey, that team's done. That team is done. Dave,
That's
CJ
an
Stroud.
awful take, Andy.
Look, CJ Stroud, the Texans are winning with him, surpassing expectations. Take him out, they're done. So much more valuable player to his team, just like McCaffrey's the Niners. You take out any, no, you take Tyreek Hill away from the Dolphins, far less capable Dolphins team without Tyreek Hill, much more valuable to his team than Brock Purdy. I mean, you could go down the line with most votes. Take out Dak from the Cowboys. The Cowboys aren't going to perform as well, but maybe they would because they've got Trey Lance, who should probably be the starting quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers. You
Oh
take out
my
Justin
gosh.
Fields from the Bears. The Bears are even worse than they are today. I mean, you could go down almost every team in the NFL and find a more valuable player to their team than Brock Purdy. Look, Sam Darnold had that fantastic log roll into the end zone last year. He could log roll his ass into the MVP position if you're basing it on wins, losses,
Oh my
and he was the
God.
starter for the San Francisco 49ers. Brock Purdy, I appreciate your story. You're a thousand times better football player than I ever could dream of being. Great talent, great story. Best of luck in the playoffs. Absolutely not the most valuable player in the NFL, the UFL, the CFL, or any other fucking minor league. All right? No way.
All
So
right, Andy.
I'm
Well,
excited.
you went on quite a rant there, Andy. I might have to snip that one out and put that all together. But I
It's a
think
team
that's
mode,
it.
Dave.
I
It's a
think
team
look,
mode.
I think you made some fair points. We disagree. I don't think he's not the MVP this year. This is only his second year. He was the last pick in the draft. I
Yeah,
mean, give
as he
him.
should have been, as he should have been. He's a mighty fine last pick in the draft. I mean, come on, he's
But look at all the people who were picked above him, and look how he's far exceeded all of them. I think it's just it is a compelling story. It'll be interesting to watch as the season plays out and in the career as it plays out because he's clearly the quarterback for the Niners at least for the next year as he gets that set up. So, Andy, anything else on the pro football front that you want to cover?
Dave. I think before we get any more animated, I think it's best that we go ahead and transition into a new topic.
Okay. All right, let's transition. Andy, real quick on another sport related front. Did you see the news with the XFL?
Yeah,
XFL and USFL are merging. The Rock, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, owns the XFL. They had I thought it was a pretty successful first year under him last year. I watched some of the games. They were entertaining. I liked a lot of the rules that they put in. They weren't gimmicky rules. They were actually I think really kind of commonsensical rules that I wish the NFL would look at and adopt. And they had quite a good, following. I think the Washington Defenders team was very heavily attended. It got great reviews. There was a lot of great activity from the XFL. The USFL also started after the XFL in terms of their season. But they merged. So 4 teams from the XFL, 4 teams from the USFL. They'll keep the XFL and USFL titles, kind of like the AFC and NFC conferences. They'll join forces and have a good spring season. Andy, I think what we saw last year was that there's an appetite for it. But before, when the USFL was around and the XFL was around, there really wasn't an appetite for spring football. Now I think there is. It's an entertaining product. What do you think about this activity?
Yeah, I'm excited about it, to be honest. I mean, I think you're right. I think the NFL has sort of conditioned us to think about football all year long, right? It's no
Right.
longer just in season, but I mean, I'm consuming Lions podcast in the off season. We're talking about the draft, and everything's exciting. So I think it's a great time for a spring league. And when the XFL and USFL started almost exactly the same time, this incarnation of them, you knew they couldn't last. Like they couldn't both
Right.
survive. And so back in September, they announced that they were looking at a merger. That's gone through. I think they're keeping 4 teams from each league in the new, I think what might be called the UFL, if I remember correctly. I think
Yep.
it's great. I'm excited about it. Like you said, I think the management for the XFL, the Rock came in, others came in, some good management personnel, really thinking through how to present this new league, working with the NFL, sort of helping identify players, talent, and transition them. I think it's super exciting. And football is fun to watch, and pro level players, even if they're not the NFL's elite players, when you've got relatively equally capable and matched players playing football, it's exciting to watch. Just like college football is exciting, just like high school football can be exciting to watch. So I think the XFL or the new UFL or whatever they end up being I think it's timely. I'm looking forward to it. I look forward to checking it out. I'll say that notably, there's still no Virginia team, something we will have to rectify at some point. But exciting to see. So I think it's a good
Yeah.
move. I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes this spring and seeing what happens. So I think it's really exciting.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I did find myself watching, not, I didn't wouldn't watch a game end to end, but I would, I did see the news. I mean, it does have it, like the XFL had a deal with ESPN. I think the key things you hit on too is like it has to be connected to the NFL in some way, shape, or form. Because I mean, trying to compete against that is never going to work. It's just
Yeah.
not viable. But you can have some sort of, if you want to call it like a minor league type of thing where you can have player development, maybe even look at rules development as the same thing that like the Major League Baseball uses their minors to test out new rules with the pitch clocks that were wildly successful this year in Major League Baseball and some other things. I think it's a great step, and I do like The Rock. I mean, I'm a big fan of his from his wrestling heyday. I like some of his movies, not all, but some of his movies. And I do think he really does a great job of again promoting positivity and giving people an opportunity. So I really do enjoy that. So yeah, great opportunity there, Andy. Anything else on that topic?
No, good there. So we'll see where it goes, and maybe it will be something for us to discuss further here in the spring episodes.
Yeah, looking forward to it. All right, Andy, you want to transition us again one more time? One last topic. Oh man, that's looking good. That's looking good. All right, Andy, you have come on, you posted recently on Threads your disdain for a certain letter, I will say.
Yeah,
Is that fair to say?
fair to
Um,
say.
talk to us about this. This is a quite an interesting take, a resolution for 2024, Andy.
Dave, so this is a very important and sensitive topic to me that I can get even more excited about than the nonsense around Brock Purdy being the MVP. So I have long loathed the letter C as the most useless letter in the English language. Now, English as a language makes no sense, right? And we've got all sorts of relics in the language that make it very difficult for folks to learn. I mean, heaven forbid you're coming from another country trying to learn English because it doesn't make sense. It's not logical. But the letter C, more than anything else, is just archaic and useless. So, background to my current griping, Festivus, which many know, made famous in Seinfeld back in 1997, originated back in the 60s as a Reader's Digest article, but became famous in 97, celebrated on December 23rd, right, as a day of airing our grievances, right, airing our grievances. And so on Threads, somebody had posted an article to get sort of kicking things off about Festivus, and one person responded. Liv heard about Pluto handle on Threads, responded with a grievance about some use of certain words, which led me to complain about the letter C, and so I posted a related thread. I'll share the link with you later on that, sort of complaining about my frustration with the letter C. And Dave, it serves no functional purposes. Are you an S? No. Are you a K? No. Do you have your own sound? No. It's just an imposter. It's a useless, worthless imposter. The only like logical use for the letter C would be the ch sound, right? CH. like I could buy into that. Keep the letter C around. It's just the ch sound on its own. And there are some languages, as was shared with me by another Threads user, Strange Bird, explained to me that there's in the Czech language, the letter C with a little accent on top has a certain sound, right? So she explained that. So some languages have cracked the code on this, but here in the United States in American English, it, it- you know, cake, CAKE, makes no sense. ICE makes no sense. So like Brock Purdy and MVP talk, see, get the fuck out of here. You're useless. We don't need you. You're just confusing. So my vow, Dave, is that should I ever get inspired to run for public office, I think the most important singular issue on my platform will be to abolish or modify the letter C. I think it's something that all of America can rally around. In a time of divisiveness and anger, I think this could really bring us together as a country, right? Get rid of the letter C, modify the letter C. I think it's something good for America to rally around, Dave. So those are my feelings. What are your thoughts on this completely useless letter?
I have no thoughts, Andy. I have never once considered that we would remove a letter from the alphabet, but this is just the level that you can get into. Andy, I don't know if that's your chemo talking or not. Like you're bringing into like a fresh mind out of all of this, and all of a sudden you're starting to see like clearer, and you're starting to break down walls. Maybe it's a superpower, Andy. Maybe how long have you had this hatred for C?
This goes back a long way. And Dave, you actually raised a really good point. So my hatred towards C goes back a very long way. I can't tell you when it started. Something's always rattled me, but you know, as I shared before we started, so I'm in the middle of chemo treatment. I chemo yesterday, I have chemo today, so my brain is a little bit fuzzy. Maybe that's why there's a little bit more animation. But chemo, CHEMO, get the fuck out of here, right? Just use the letter K, right? Chemo, CH, that should be ch. If not, like, is it chemo? What is going on here, right? So it's useless, Dave. I'm sorry I've had a chance to sit here and ponder. I think most Americans haven't, but like the silent K, like there's no reason to have these stupid things in the language. So we need to make some changes. This is a key one, for all of us, Dave. For all of us, Dave. It's something America can really rally around, I think.
Yeah, Andy, I really I have no words, to be honest. So I'm not sure if we should just wrap the pot on that. You've left me speechless for 2023, Andy. That I guess I'm like this is definitely going to be a cut for that we'll post on our YouTube channel because I think everyone needs to hear this. I'm debating that though, Andy, whether we need to have a poll about who's right about Brock Purdy or not, or whether or not the letter C should continue moving forward. I'm beginning to think that we should talk about letter C. So maybe that's our poll for this week in the end of 2023.
I think it's an important topic, Dave. I mean, case in point again, maybe it's time for us to change the spelling of Christmas, right? Because again, there's no reason for that to be a CH word, right? So, I mean, imagine the chaos of Jesus Christ being JK moving forward. That would just start all sorts of absolute confusion, right? I mean, that could be disastrous in so many ways, but it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. So, if we post the poll, I hope folks will weigh in on this. I think it's an important topic, and I think together we can make a positive change for America, Dave. So thank you for allowing me to discuss this. I think it's a good discussion. San Francisco with a K, right? I mean, it only makes sense. It only makes sense. So hey,
Oh,
Festivus is a great celebration. I'm glad people could air their grievances. I think it's always fun to do that. That's mine for 2023, and until we make the change, it will remain my number one grievance, I think, Dave. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about that.
this is as much of your platform as mine, Andy, and I'm glad we could have this opportunity to share that. So let's just end it there, Andy. I think no better place to end this podcast. I'm not sure if we'll do another podcast this year. We'll see how it goes the rest of this week. But Andy, if we don't talk, Happy New Year to you. And to all our listeners, Happy New Year to you as well. And I hope you're all enjoying the holidays. We will be back on track next week, most likely starting again on Wednesday. But But unless something else comes up, Andy, where we need to get into the C thing again. But Andy, with that, any closing comments?
Now, Dave, Happy New Year to you. Great to start these pods in 2023. Thanks for all those that have been listening, and excited to continue in 2024 with the podcasts and with, Dave, great job with the YouTube clips. And thanks for everybody that's plugged in and working on this with us. We enjoy it. We appreciate it. And Dave, Happy New Year to you and yours.
All right. And with that, Andy, we will talk to you next time.